Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we're discussing my thoughts on episode 9 of the anime series Shokugeki no Soma, Sen no Sara, Toutsuki Ressha-hen, the second half of season 3 of Shokugeki no Soma, the Toutsuki train arc, respectively. And this has to be, to date, my favorite episode of the series thus far. All of the calling back on Joichiro's time in Polar Star, you know, his fledgling era, if you will, where he met so many culinary challenges and took on 50 people on his own in a Shokugeki. It's almost outlandish. It's almost, you know, sort of pushing that suspension of disbelief over the edge, you know. But it was absolutely fascinating. A lot of the overhanging questions and curiosities I'd long had about his time in Toutsuki Academy, alongside Dojima and Azami and Jun and all that kind of stuff, were actually dealt with in this episode. What led to his leaving Toutsuki sort of unceremoniously and everything like that. All of the pressure that he was under. He was, you know, you could make a pun about his being a pressure cooker the whole time, with all of the expectations and just the weight of the world on his shoulders because of his genius. And this is something we see in the real world time and time and time again. Prodigies who just, you know, they have a mental breakdown after having to meet so many expectations for so long a time, and having to just be utter perfection at every single thing they do. Every waking moment they are, you know, cognizant, is obsessing about controlling their behavior and their talents, and you know, sort of summarizing that down to just the most finely, you know, edged point in whatever they're doing, you know, whether that's being a musician or, you know, a performer or a dancer, in this case, an aspiring chef, and how it just drove Joichiro practically mad. You know, like, it was mind-boggling. It was astounding to me, and just, I ate every dripping minute of it up. You know, again, no pun intended. And I love a lot of the, you know, sort of visual aesthetics that they were doing, nodding to the fact that he was pulling out ahead of the pack, you know, almost as though he were trying to survive the desert, you know, the harsh environment of sandstorms, and eventually he's the only one there anymore, and he's losing himself to all of those expectations that are at his door, you know. The people who he makes the food for, they're like, well, this was great, it tasted good, what's the next thing you're gonna do, you know? It would never stop. He could never get a break. And he started stemming off into that whole aspect of making disgusting dishes just for the fun of it, just to blow off some steam and to lighten his load a little bit, lighten that burden. And unfortunately, Jun suffered, apparently, time and time again, along the same lines as Megumi has, you know, Soma's making similar disgusting concoctions in the modern era. But I just loved all the dynamics and the relationships being explored here between Joichiro, Dojima, Azami, getting insights into Azami's, you know, sort of outlook. He's become something more of a compelling villain, because now we see a more clearly defined reasoning behind what it is he's trying to bring about in Toutsuki, the change he's trying to instill. It all has this, you know, he wants to make everything a well-oiled machine. He wants everything to be hunkered down to one sort of pseudo-designation as he has outlined it, you know, so that nobody should ever feel motivated to give up on that passion, that culinary passion, ever again, like the person he most looked up to, Joichiro, had done. You know, he wants to create an environment where it's kind of tipped to perfection, where that will never happen again. Nobody will ever have so much expectation put on them, heaped on them, that will just, you know, the pressure will just drive them away from what it is they're seeking to do and aspiring to do. That creativity, that artistic culinary talent, you know. And so in a sense, it's like, okay, well, now we see where Azami's coming from. It's not, you know, all bad necessarily, but he's going about it entirely the wrong way. That's the whole thing. It's with good intentions that the road to hell has been paved, as far as what Azami's motivations are and what he's trying to carry out. And I just love that, the friendships that were forged between Joichiro, Dojima, and such like that. Even to an extent, the elder Nakiri, Arina's grandfather, seeing the potential that Joichiro had and being the one to tell him, you should leave now. You should, not just leave Toutsuki, leave all of Japan. Go traveling, find yourself. Go out in search of yourself, experience things, no longer subsist on the pressure of what everyone surrounding you in the academy is heaping onto you. Because you need to get back in touch with what makes you who you are. And knowing that, being supportive of that, and later, this falling hand in hand with his eventually pressuring Joichiro to have Soma become a part of Toutsuki Academy, trying to rend asunder, all of the machinations that people like Azami would have and would put forth, in the hopes of creating sort of an esteemed version of Polar Star all over again, create a renaissance in a sense, calling back on the way it was in its glory days, the golden age with Joichiro, Dojima, Azami, and Jun. And I love how their bonds have all strengthened once again now that they're all reunited. In this effort, building up to that precipice that, Team Shokugeki between Azami and his central, his Elite 10, and everything like that. It excites me that much more for what is coming along those lines. But all of the past, getting into all of the past of Joichiro and seeing that his saving grace in life, and this is a thought Dojima imparts, calling back on his own past once Joichiro got back in touch with him, saying, I'm back in Japan, I have a restaurant, I have a son. And I love the coinciding visuals of Joichiro's calling back on his time feeling alone in the desert amongst all that harsh weather and quizzically wondering, what would my son be like if he were in my shoes, in that position, the way I was feeling. And they cut to Soma in that environment, just ear to ear grin, because he perseveres no matter what, no matter the obstacle. It excites him when he's met with opposition, when he fails, because he knows, I'm going to try that much harder and I'm going to perfect it, and I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to use my talents to push forward beyond this opposition, beyond this hurdle. And that is why he's one of my favorite characters ever, lest it be said, in anime. Because he never takes it lying down. He always takes the smack on the face. If he falls, he gets back up and he's like, all right, let's have another go. And I love that. And I love that his father realizes that and appreciates that. And I love the fact that Dojima appreciates that. But from the other extended degree of realizing that this was Joichiro's saving grace, having Soma as his son, with the passion and that perseverance and everything like that, it brought Joichiro back to his center. And while they're always antagonistic to each other, comedically so, even in this episode by the end, having another Shokugeki showdown between them both, which cracked me up. They well complement each other. They help each other subsist and survive. Not merely subsist. They help them survive, and that much more, they help them, keep going and persevering and just facing all obstacles and all odds, whether they're together working in tandem or not, or if they're on their own. And so I love this father-son team. I love having gotten to know that much more about Joichiro and his past and what it was like for him. And the commentary on that perfectionism, those expectations that he had put on him, and how he conquered them all. There's no question about that. As I say, to a point, staving off that suspension of disbelief of how perfect he was, how much of a genius he was. But if you can swallow that, it's just everything else about this story, about calling back on the past, seeing how it fills in the blanks of all the relationships, how the dynamics are set up in the here and now between Azami, Dojima, Joichiro. You know, such like that, the parallels between Joichiro and Jun and Soma and Megumi, as I say. I mean, it was just, this episode was perfection to me. I absolutely love and adore it. This is my favorite episode. I'm probably going to watch it again, which is something I rarely do. I rarely watch an anime episode again just after having watched it, especially after doing a review about it. And otherwise, until the next one, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. I'll catch you all later. Peace.